In the cradle of civilization, where the ancient rivers of the Tigris and Euphrates carved their paths through the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, whispers of a demon echoed through the ages. His name sent shivers down the spines of those who dared utter it. Pazuzu, the harbinger of pestilence, the master of the southwestern wind, and the embodiment of calamity. Long before modern tales of demons and possession, Pazuzu's legend was etched into the fabric of human fear, a testament to the ancient world's understanding of the forces beyond their control. Pazuzu's fearsome reputation sprouted from the beliefs of the Assyrians and Babylonians, who viewed him as a force of chaos and destruction. His presence was said to bring drought, famine, and disease. But unlike the mindless malevolence of many demons, Pazuzu was cunning, capable of striking bargains and making pacts. He had the body of a man, but his face bore the ferocity of a lion or dog. Leathery wings sprouted from his back, dark and menacing, spreading wide to blot out the sun. His feet ended in sharp talons, and a serpent's head twisted at the tip of his tail, flicking and hissing with a life of its own. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly fire, and his mouth bristled with teeth sharp enough to pierce the hide of any god or mortal who crossed him. The ancient texts describe Pazuzu as a ruler of the southwest wind, a blast that brought not only the scorching heat of the desert, but also swarms of locusts, the harbingers of famine. This wind, carrying disease and despair, swept across the land, turning fertile fields into barren wastelands. The people feared him, for his breath carried the stench of decay, and his presence signaled doom. Yet, in a twist befitting the capricious nature of the gods, Pazuzu was also invoked as a protector, particularly against another malevolent entity known as Lamashtu. Lamashtu, a demoness of nightmares, threatened pregnant women and newborns. In their desperation, people would call upon Pazuzu to ward her off, trusting one evil to combat another. It was this duality that made Pazuzu both feared and respected. His statues were not uncommon. Amulets bearing his fearsome visage hung around the necks of those seeking protection. A strange choice for a guardian, you might think, but in the ancient world, where the line between good and evil was often blurred, Pazuzu's power was a necessary evil. His image, grotesque and terrifying, was a symbol of hope to those who feared Lamashtu's grasp. These amulets, found in the ruins of ancient cities, depict Pazuzu standing tall, his monstrous features a promise of both harm and protection. For the people of Mesopotamia, to invoke Pazuzu was to strike a bargain with darkness, a pact that required respect and understanding of the forces at play. As the centuries passed, the legend of Pazuzu spread beyond the borders of Mesopotamia. His name was whispered in the marketplaces of Babylon, spoken with reverence in the temples of Assyria, and chanted in the rituals of those who sought to harness his power. He was not merely a demon of destruction, but a figure of myth, a story that resonated with the fears and hopes of those who lived in a world governed by the whims of gods and spirits. The ancient city of Nineveh, a bustling center of commerce and culture, was no stranger to the tales of Pazuzu. It was here that his legend took on new life, intertwined with the fate of a young priest named Ashurbanipal. Ashurbanipal, known for his piety and curiosity, served in the great temple of Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. The city was a jewel of the ancient world, but one summer, its prosperity was threatened by a relentless drought. The skies, once generous with rain, turned a merciless blue, and the fields lay cracked and barren. The people's prayers to Ishtar went unanswered, and desperation hung in the air like a shadow. It was in this dire time that Ashurbanipal stumbled upon an ancient text hidden deep within the temple's vast library. The pages, yellowed with age, spoke of a demon, a being of wind and fire, who could bend the elements to his will. Pazuzu, the text called him, the demon of the dry winds. Driven by a desperate need to save his people, Ashurbanipal delved into the forbidden knowledge. The text detailed rituals and offerings, ways to summon Pazuzu and bind him to the summoner's will. The young priest believed he could harness Pazuzu's power, compel the demon to bring rain, and save Nineveh from ruin. Under the cover of night, Ashurbanipal prepared for the summoning. He gathered the required ingredients: bones of a serpent, the blood of a black goat, and sacred herbs, their scent heavy in the still air. In the heart of the temple, he drew a circle of protection, its symbols glowing faintly in the dim light of the flickering torches. As Ashurbanipal chanted the incantations, a chill crept into the room, the temperature dropping as the shadows deepened. A growl, low and guttural, filled the air, and the ground beneath him shuddered. From the darkness, Pazuzu emerged, his form towering and terrible, his wings stretching wide. The air around him crackled with energy, and his eyes burned with a malevolent light. The demon demanded to know who dared summon him, challenging the audacity of the mortal before him. Ashurbanipal, though trembling, declared himself a servant of Ishtar and pleaded for Pazuzu's aid to end the drought that was killing his people. Pazuzu, seeing the desperation in the young priest, mocked him for thinking he could bargain with the demon. Yet the demon was intrigued by the offer, and with a sinister smile, agreed to bring rain, but warned there would be a price. Blinded by his desire to save his city, Ashurbanipal agreed, not comprehending the true cost of his deal. With a gesture, Pazuzu unleashed a gust of wind, extinguishing the torches and plunging the temple into darkness. When light returned, Pazuzu had vanished, leaving only the acrid scent of sulfur and the echo of his laughter in the air. The next day, dark clouds gathered over Nineveh, and rain fell in torrents, drenching the parched earth. The people rejoiced, their prayers seemingly answered, but their joy was short-lived. As the rain poured, so did a plague of sickness. The crops, saved from drought, rotted in the fields, and a foul stench rose from the waters, now black and tainted. Panic spread like wildfire, and the people turned against Ashurbanipal, blaming him for the calamities that had befallen them. Haunted by guilt and the consequences of his actions, Ashurbanipal returned to the temple, seeking a way to undo the curse he had unleashed. He searched through the ancient texts, desperate to find a ritual to banish the demon. But the knowledge was incomplete, fragments of words lost to time. Determined to right his wrongs, Ashurbanipal gathered what he could. Once more, he drew a circle, this time with salt and iron, substances believed to repel evil. He chanted the incantations, his voice steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. The air grew cold, the shadows thickening, but there was no growl, no tremor of the earth. A silence, deep and oppressive, filled the temple, broken only by the howl of the wind. Suddenly, Pazuzu appeared, more terrible than before, his eyes burning with fury. His wings cast a darkness that consumed the light, and his presence shook the very foundations of the temple. The demon, enraged by being summoned again, taunted Ashurbanipal for thinking he could be banished so easily. Ashurbanipal, clutching a talisman inscribed with protective symbols, shouted the incantation meant to send Pazuzu back to the underworld. But Pazuzu laughed, his voice echoing through the temple, mocking the priest's efforts. With a wave of his hand, Pazuzu broke the circle, scattering the salt and iron like dust. The talisman slipped from Ashurbanipal's grasp, its power rendered useless. The demon advanced, his eyes glowing with malice, a smile spreading across his face, promising death. As Pazuzu reached for him, Ashurbanipal's scream filled the temple, a sound of terror that echoed into the night. The next morning, the people of Nineveh found the temple empty, its walls scorched, the air thick with the smell of sulfur. Ashurbanipal was gone, his fate unknown, but the city was free of the curse. The rain had ceased, the air was clear, and the plague had lifted. The people rejoiced, but their joy was tainted by the knowledge that Pazuzu was still out there, waiting, watching. The legend of Pazuzu spread far and wide, a tale of terror told by firelight, a warning of the dangers of summoning what cannot be controlled. It was said that those who called upon Pazuzu would find only despair, for the demon's power was not to be trifled with. His name was whispered in fear, an ancient warning that even the bravest hearts could be undone by the darkness that lies beyond the mortal realm. Over the centuries, the tale of Pazuzu faded into the annals of history, a story forgotten by most, remembered only by those who delved into the ancient texts. But in the shadows, Pazuzu's name lived on, a murmur in the dark, a flicker in the corner of the eye. His legend took on new forms, twisted and reshaped by the minds of those who sought to understand the unknown. In modern times, a new name emerged, Zozo, a demon said to haunt Ouija boards, a trickster who preyed on the unsuspecting. Many believed Zozo to be none other than Pazuzu, resurfacing in a new guise. But the truth is far different, for Pazuzu and Zozo are not one and the same. While Pazuzu is rooted in ancient mythology, Zozo is a product of modern fears, a legend born from the collective imagination. The association between the two is a misconception, a blending of myth and reality that has no basis in the ancient texts. Pazuzu's domain was the winds and the plague, his power tied to the elements and the natural world. Zozo, on the other hand, is a creature of the mind, a demon that feeds on fear and the unknown. The conflation of the two is a testament to the enduring power of myth, the way stories evolve and change over time, adapting to the fears and hopes of each generation. Adding to this modern misrepresentation is Pazuzu's infamous cameo in the book and movie The Exorcist. Here, Pazuzu was portrayed as a demon of possession, capable of taking over the body of an innocent girl, causing her to speak in tongues, levitate, and commit horrific acts. The demon's malevolent presence in the story painted Pazuzu as an all-powerful, purely evil entity bent on destruction for destruction's sake. This portrayal, while effective in creating a terrifying antagonist for the horror classic, was a far cry from Pazuzu's true nature, as understood in ancient Mesopotamian culture. Pazuzu, in his original context, was not typically associated with possession or personal malice towards individuals. His terror was more widespread, his influence felt in the devastation of natural disasters and the spread of disease, not in the intimate horror of possession. The choice to use Pazuzu in The Exorcist was likely a creative one, taking advantage of the demon's fearsome reputation to amplify the story's horror elements. However, this artistic license further muddied the waters, blurring the lines between ancient myth and modern fiction. Pazuzu, the demon of the southwest wind, remains a figure of ancient dread. His legend warns us of the power and unpredictability of the natural world. He is a force of chaos, a symbol of destruction, but also a guardian, a protector against greater evils. His story is one of duality, of the thin line between good and evil, and the choices that shape the fate of mortals. In the dark corners of the world, where the wind howls and the shadows stretch long, Pazuzu's name is still whispered, reminding mortals that even in the light of day, darkness is never far away. As the winds of time continue to blow, the legend of Pazuzu endures, a tale passed down through the generations, a story of fear and hope, of power and consequence. In the ancient cities of Mesopotamia, where the ruins lie silent under the desert sun, the spirit of Pazuzu lingers, a presence felt in the rustle of the wind, in the shifting sands, in the whispers of the past. For those who dare to listen, Pazuzu's voice can still be heard, passed down through time, that the ancient world with all its gods and demons is never truly gone, but merely waiting, hidden in the shadows, ready to return when the time is right.